Silent films are a subject that have always fascinated me, due to the fact that they are the first pieces of motion picture media. And in my opinion, it's extremely impressive knowing the fact that this was the start of film and will lead to the creation of masterpieces. But it's also extremely frustrating knowing that so many silent films are considered lost. According to a 2013 study made by the Library of Congress, around 75% to 90% of all silent films are missing or permanently lost, due to a number of reasons, mostly having to do with the fact that the material used to make film reels, silver nitrate, is extremely flammable and can naturally deteriorate over time, and also due to the fact that most film studios didn't see value in their works, so would just throw them out. So that's why today I'll be talking about 5 cases of lost silent films that I find pretty interesting. First Men on the Moon was a British film that was released in 1919. The film is based on a 1901 novel of the same name, with the film's plot following Samson Cover and Rupert Bedford, who both go to the moon in a sphere made of a substance called cavorite. The film was initially released in 1919. It received mostly mixed reviews, mostly due to the crude nature of the film, specifically the costumes of the inhabitants of the moon. Since the film's initial 1919 release, it has never been seen since. The British Film Institute lists this as one of their 75 most wanted features, with only one production still surviving and a few newspaper reviews remaining as the only piece of this film to continue existing. The Mountain Eagle was a film that was released in 1926 by famous filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock. The film's plot is based in Kentucky, where 3 men seek the attention of a schoolteacher, which leads to framing, wrongful imprisonment, and murder. The film was mostly shot in Germany, specifically Bavaria, with the exterior footage being shot in Austria. But the production was a mess, with poor weather conditions delaying some shooting. The specific incident where firemen were called to hose down some snowfall. This film was neither a critical nor financial success, with the film not impressing the public or distributors. Even Hitchcock himself described the film as awful and a very bad movie. Due to this mixed and negative reception, the film was never preserved, with no footage surviving. The British Film Institute lists this as their most sought-after lost film, with The Mountain Eagle topping their previously mentioned 75 most wanted features. All that survived of this film are a few production stills and 1 movie poster. Georges Melies was a French filmmaker that is famous for his pioneering of early special effects, with his most notable work being the 1902 film A Trip to the Moon. However, Melies had made hundreds of other films with his equally as stunning special effects, with around 100 films being documented to have existed at some point. Most of his lost films being intentionally destroyed by French authorities during World War I, with film materials being used to make boot heels and other materials for the French war effort. However, even more films would become lost, because Melies was forced to burn some of his films so he could sell off the silver content that they contained. But it gets even worse from here, because in an act of blind rage, Melies burned down his own film studio, which destroyed most of his props and a large chunk of his filmography, with 3 lost films being noteworthy. The first is titled Robbing Cleopatra's Tomb. This film's plot involves a man chopping up the mummy of Cleopatra into pieces, which then produces a woman from the smoking brazier. This film is believed to be the first film to involve a mummy and was thought to be found in 2005, but ended up being another Melies film with a similar plot. Another lost film is Red Riding Hood, which, as the name implies, is an adaptation of Little Red Riding Hood, and to my knowledge at least, is the first adaptation of the story into film. And the last Melies film I'll be talking about is the arrival of a train at Vincennes Station, which is how I think you pronounce it. This film shows what the title says, a train arriving at the Vincennes Station. This film is a bit mysterious because of the fact that this film may or may not be lost, because of the fact that an antique flipbook claims to have images of the train in action, but this has not been confirmed. And as of 2022, only 231 films out of the 500 to ever be made have survived. Un Bon Bock, or A Good Beer in English, is a French film that was released in 1892, alongside 2 other animated films made by the same creator, Charles-Émile Reynaud, with them being Bavir Barrett and Le Clown et ses Jeans, or The Clown and His Dogs in English. but it was initially created in 1888. The film's plot consists of a wanderer who enters a cabaret in the countryside and asks for a beer from beautiful waitress. She comes back with a pint as the wanderer begins to court her. In the meantime, the kitchen boy comes and drinks his beer and vanishes. The wanderer, misunderstanding, asks for another one. Then the traveler enters and has an argument with the first fellow. And during the argument, the kitchen boy appears, sips a second beer, and runs away. As the traveler quits, the customer finds the glass empty again. He calls the waitress, expresses his disappointment, and leaves. The kitchen boy comes in and explains to the waitress what he did with the 2 beers. They both make fun of the wanderer and leave. This film is actually one of the first to ever be created. And to put this into perspective, the first film ever made is the Round Hick Garden Scene, which was made in 1888, the same year that this film was created, which also means that there's a pretty good argument to be made, which can call this the first animated film ever made. However, this film was animated differently compared to the typical late 19th to earliest 20th century animated film. Instead, all of Reynaud's films would be painted onto a transparent script of blank images. Reynaud's other films are also pretty noteworthy too. Javier Barret was another animated film created 2 years after Un Bon Bak, but was also screened in 1892. Javier Barret has only around 4 out of 15 minutes surviving, and is also considered to be the oldest surviving animated film. Le Clown et ses Jeans was another animated film created by Reynaud in 1891, and was the third film of Reynaud released in 1892. The film's plot mostly consists of the clown and his 3 dogs performing tricks for 10 minutes. However, none of this film survives, because in 1900, when Reynaud was suffering from depression, he threw all of his films, except for the fragment of Javier Barret and another film, into the Seine River. As of 2022, all that remains of the animated work of Charles-Émile Reynaud are the fragments consisting of a 6-minute runtime. The Fairy and Radio Plays was a film released in 1908 and is the first film adaptation of the Wizard of Oz book series. The title is based on the word travelogue, which is combined with the word fairy. The film was also written by the famous book author, Frank Baum, who, guess what, wrote the Wizard of Oz book series. This film is also quite historic due to the fact that this was the first film to have an original soundtrack, beating D.W. Griffith's infamous The Birth of a Nation. And this is also the first color feature film, as in a long movie. This is also the first film to have a multimedia production, because at the same time of the film screenings, there was a play based on the film that would see critical acclaim and would constantly see sold out shows. Despite this, the plays would cost way too much to profit off of. The financial failure of the film and play would lead to Baum being disappointed with the film. Baum would continue writing books until his death in 1919. The film would be shown again in 1925, but the film would fade into obscurity, the film being said to be discarded by the Baum estate after discovering its decomposition. In the late 1980s, one single color still was uncovered, but unfortunately nothing else was discovered, and this piece of history remains lost to this very day.